Welcome, my loves, and thank you for watching. Whether you're watching live or later, I don't take it for granted that you're here watching this live. Today, we are talking about grief, loss, and trauma and how it impacts us. We're going to just navigate all things grief, loss, and trauma. Please share, like, and comment on this live. It's about to get active, and we want you to be active and interactive. All right, so before we get started, I just want to introduce my special guest for today, but allow me to reintroduce myself. Angela Beasley is a licensed professional counselor, international presenter, singer, and creative visionary with a heart for ministry and healing. With experience spanning mental health, media, and public speaking, she empowers audiences through faith-based insight, trauma-informed care, and authentic storytelling. A former podcaster and global presenter, Angela uses her voice, both in speech and song, to inspire transformation, cultivate hope, and restore lives across cultures and communities. It's time to introduce my guests. Marlon Boutin, LPCS, a native to New Orleans, alumnus of McMain Secondary School, LSU, and University of Holy Cross, has worked in mental health for approximately 15 years. He has worked in a range of roles across the state of Louisiana, including managing specialized mental health services in over 20 parishes. Currently working in behavioral health managed care for Louisiana and Oklahoma. Adjunct professor at Loyola University, private practice therapist at NOLA Counseling Center, and the founder of NOLA Mind Gym. Marlon's goal in life is to simply do the work, give back, and heal the community, one person at a time. Dr. Jamal Bodine holds a PhD in counselor education and supervision, a master's in counseling, and a bachelor's in psychology, all from the University of Holy Cross in New Orleans. He is a national certified counselor and a licensed professional counselor in Louisiana. In 2022, he was recognized as an NBCC Minority Fellowship Program doctoral fellow. Dr. Bodine is a school counselor at CT Jeanette pre-K through 8th grade, school, and an adjunct faculty member of the University of Holy Cross. His work focuses on supporting young Black men as counselors, increasing mental health awareness in Black communities, and providing care for children, adolescents, and adults with cognitive, emotional, and behavioral concerns. Well, listen, we are about to get started. Before we do, I need you to do something for me. Share, like, and make sure you are blowing up the comments. We want to hear from you. We want you to interact. Let us know that you are enjoying the conversation. Make sure you share. We're going to get started soon. Okay, y'all. So we're about to get started soon. Again, I'm so happy for you to be here. I want you to like, share, and comment. Share this live. And if you're watching live or later, thank you for being here. We're about to get started. All right, let's go. We're talking about grief, loss, and trauma. Hey, y'all. Welcome to another segment. I am so happy that you are watching. Listen, again, you heard it in the intro, but I want you to make sure that you are liking, sharing these conversations. we're having conversations, or we had conversations all throughout mental health uh, awareness month. This month, the month of May, every month we bring awareness. It breaks stigma. It helps people find help. It helps people to know that they are not alone. The conversations have been amazing this month, and listen, I am excited about my two guests that I have today to talk about grief, loss, and trauma. They are specialists in these things, so I know that you're gonna gain a lot of insight. So you heard a lot about who I am and my guests and why I'm doing this. I hope you've been enjoying it. Again, share this live. So we're gonna hop on in because we're talking about grief, loss, and trauma again. But I have a few general stats regarding trauma. As a addiction specialist or addictions counselor, I frequent the topic of grief, loss, and trauma. Grief is something that we all have to navigate. It's not limited to death. We're going to talk about that as well. You can lose a job, you can lose your identity. As you're shifting, if you're a mother and you're now an empty nester, you may lose a sense of self. So grief and loss comes in many different packages, shapes, and shades, right? But also regarding trauma, I want to say 1 in 10, or we can say about 70% of adults worldwide have experienced at least one traumatic event in their life. Regarding adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, approximately 64% of adults in the US report at least one ACE, which is abuse, neglect, or household dysfunction. And then childhood trauma, about 33% of children in the US will experience at least one traumatic event by the age of 16. So those are some stats. Without further ado, I do want to bring on today's guest, starting with Dr. Jamal Bodine. Welcome.
Hey Angie, hey everybody, how y'all doing?
Yeah, good to have you here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
And then Marlon Boutin.
Hello.
Hello. So listen, these guys, I just want to tell you a little bit about them. I am so grateful for the network that I have. I sat down and I thought about, I know a lot of people and I need to start tapping into it. So I want to start with Marlon. I've been knowing Marlon. Well, we went to middle school together.
Yep.
Marlon always had a big personality, always was funny. But who knew that he would evolve into this man, this amazing healer? Being on the battle line for like 15 years, that is amazing. Helping people to heal. So kudos to you, Marlon.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then Dr. Jamal. Dr. Jamal. I've been knowing Jamal for approximately 10 years. I met him while I was in a group called The Difference, Jessica Harvey and The Difference. And Jamal is just multifaceted. He is a creative as well as a healer, and has done phenomenal work regarding grief, and then Marlon, trauma. But there's a correlation, and we'll see. We'll see soon. But guys, I want to get us warmed up before we just hop into the questions. I want to know, what made you choose this field? Personally, I feel like I'm gonna start off. I was always a counselor. People always found safety in me. I don't know why. Random strangers would come to me, just start pouring out their life stories, right? I feel like it chose me rather than me choosing this field. But what made you choose this path of being a counselor? And anybody can start.
Well, I'll piggyback, kind of ditto. Within my family, that was a big thing. I would say, shout out to my grandmother, woman of the church. She definitely kept me engaged in community engagement, volunteering in like Covenant House and all these different experiences. I did have an aunt that was special needs, and me and her, we were like this. And I think that was my first exposure to mental health. We went to you. Thought I was going to do pre med, ended up
Wow.
finding psychology and loving it. And so once I graduated that, I started to investigate, what can I do with this degree, and came across counseling. Once I got into it, I was like, this is my purpose. So that's what got me here.
Nice, nice. So your mom brought you on site. I remember my mom, well, I don't remember this detail, but she told me that she used to have me in the car carrier as a baby, toting me to class. So I must have been listening to something.
Probably so. It stuck with you.
And then at work, she would tuck me under the desk as she would see clients. So
Oh.
I guess unethical.
But it stuck with you. Got you here.
So same question for you, Doc. What
So
made this?
for me, it's like the same with you, Angie and Marlon. Counseling chose me, or should I say, God chose counseling for me, because if anybody knows me, I'm very quiet, reserved in the background, don't want to be seen, introverted, and so the thought of when I was 18 years old becoming a counselor never crossed my mind. I just ended up getting a bachelor's degree in psychology and quickly found out that it wasn't much I can do with that. And then things started to align for me, and for me to be here where I am today as a counselor and a counselor educator. So I want to say that it was a part of God's plan and his will. And when I was younger, like you, I always just was a good listener. I always read the room. Even if I wasn't saying anything, I paid attention to everything and realized that, wow, humans are some individual and unique creatures. Human behavior is very interesting. I need to learn more about this. So it chose me. It chose me.
Nice, nice. So it just seems like we all have these natural attending skills that no one had to teach us, but we went to school, became refined, and now we are walking in purpose. So that's cool. And I just want to give y'all kudos. I don't want to make this about race, etc., but I love to see the representation of Black males in this field. We know that it is oversaturated with women. So you both are gems and rare commodities. So kudos to y'all for the work that you've done.
Thank you.
For sure. So let's hop into it. We're here to talk about grief, loss, and trauma. Here's the first question. What is grief, and how does it show up in different ways for different people?
I'll tackle first. So grief is a natural response to loss, right? And you said earlier, when you think of loss, the first thing you think of is the loss of a loved one. But there are so many other losses as well. We can't compare which one should hurt the most, right? Because grief is universal, but grief is an individual experience. We all don't experience things the same. We all don't respond the same, but we all do grieve, whether we want to admit it or not. And it can show up in so many different ways. As sadness, it can show up as happiness. It can show up as fear, guilt, shame, regret. It's so many different things we can talk about. Just in a nutshell, because of time, it's a natural response to a loss. Whether that loss could be a job, a relationship, a house, or normalcy. Like with COVID, we took a big loss with COVID.
Wow, we did.
We had to isolate ourselves. We couldn't. I know for me, like, I've been going to church on every Sunday since I was a little boy. So not being able to go to church with everybody was a big loss, and we grieved that, right? And so that's just in a nutshell to me that grief is just a natural response to a loss.
Wow, that's so good. Marlon, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, grief, I like to look at it as like a place where love meets loss. A lot of times you may hear people say grief is a place where, love has nowhere to go, right? It exists, it's there, but it doesn't have anywhere to go. And I think sometimes that's true initially, because you have to figure that piece out, right? And it's a journey. I think one piece of grief is not like a one-time situation. Sometimes it could be, a journey. And, personally speaking, just as we talked about grief, I lost my mom just a year ago. So I know for me, there's no timeline attached to it. It's really like a journey and the pieces of it. But I think a lot of times grief has a component of love in it that makes it painful, but it also makes it powerful.
Wow. Y'all, so I was talking to a friend who recently lost her father, and actually the services today, and as she was speaking on it, she says grief has a way of rewiring the brain. Can y'all talk to that for a moment? Like shifting the who that you are.
Yes. Change is inevitable. We are not meant to stay the same. You often hear when somebody dies, you'll say, I'll never be the same. You're right. You won't. You won't, because now you're learning to live without something or somebody that was there all the time. Yeah. So that requires a change. Now, when you become stuck, that's when it becomes an issue. So you want to continue to grow. And we all don't grow the same. We all don't heal on the same time, right? What affected you for 5 years might affect me 50 years later. So to me, we have to be open to change, right? At this big age that we are sitting in this room, we know one thing: we are going to lose.
Yeah.
We are going to lose something. We're going to lose somebody. And what we're doing now is building capacity. You can never fully prepare yourself for that, though. Like you say, oh, I'm preparing because my loved one is transitioning, and you never really can prepare for it. It's something that happens when it happens. So you have to be open to your brain reconstructing your whole life, because it changes very, very quickly when you lose that something or somebody.
That's good.
And I say in a counselor room too, just with grief and outside of grief, sometimes you have to be uncomfortable to change. And grief makes you very uncomfortable, right? And so sometimes, that is the sometimes that's God. Sometimes that's like this is where you become who you are. This is where you find out who you are, because you've lost something that was so comfortable for you, or someone that was comfortable to you, that now you're in this space where you may look at life different, you may feel different, you may look at your relationships a little bit different. So that change might be that fire that you need to get moving and get going. And like Doc said, when you get stuck, that's when you may have to reach out for some help and assistance.
Wow. And I'm sure community matters. Like you said, reaching out, can't go through things like this alone. So now we're going to shift. And I know, again, both of you and all of us have to touch down on certain things, but I know Marlon to be a trauma specialist. So how can trauma impact the way we process grief and loss?
Yeah, sometimes they interact, sometimes they're different, right? I think with trauma, one key factor with trauma, a lot of times we know trauma of what has happened, right? What experiences we've had, which are all notable and all should be taken into account. People should be able to tell that story. But the work of trauma, and I think the deeper part of trauma, is what happens in you. How does trauma affect you, right? I always tell my clients that we can't change what happened, although we may wish we can, but we can work on what's happening inside of you. And a part of that happens with grief. There is some grief, especially in New Orleans. We have to look at what we've been through as a city between Hurricane Katrina, terrorist attacks, COVID, the increase in violence, murders. A lot of times those things have trauma parts in it, but they also have grief, and people battle of like, well, which one am I dealing with? Trauma, grief, or both? And, all exist. So I think sometimes we have to realize that there's trauma pieces we need to work on. There's grief pieces we need to work on to help that person manage trauma. I won't necessarily say heal, because I think it's a healing process along the way, and it's kind of learning trauma, right? How do I take trauma? And I'm an existentialist. So how do I take trauma and make meaning and purpose out of it, right? How do I take trauma and know what I've grown into or what I've developed? or how I've been able to use that trauma to elevate and step up. Just like I said with grief, it may make you move, and it may make you move into a better place. So I think sometimes trauma interacts with grief in that sense. There's some parallels. Now, sometimes trauma, however, it may not be out of love. Grief have that love component. Now, sometimes trauma may not be there. So I think that's one of the huge differences that you may experience with trauma.
Wow. And how would you define trauma? What's the technical definition of trauma?
To me, like I said, I think it is your reaction or your experience to something that has happened to you that has caused great distress. A lot of times, the big ones could be abuse, whether that's domestic violence, it could be sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. We hear a lot about PTSD, which is, combat. That a lot of times you find, especially here in New Orleans, we are also a military city. A lot of folks have PTSD with that, or natural disasters. So it's really like those events that happen, right? And then how do those events affect you? How does that affect what's happening in you? And what is your reaction to it? To me, that's how I conceptualize the trauma.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, listen, y'all are big dogs in your lane. I see y'all hold it down. Let's see. What's the next question? It's what are some common emotional, physical, and mental reactions to grief and trauma?
Before we talk about those effects, I wanted to add to what Marlon was saying. That trauma makes grief more complicated. For example, like trauma creates a lot of avoidance. So, for instance, there's this man that I know, his mom died a long time ago, and he said he can never step foot inside that church again because every time he does, he sees his mom in the church laying in the casket. And so it also can create you avoiding talking about the loss, right? Trauma can create that avoidance from talking about it, or you avoiding, like I say, certain places. But if you realize it, when it comes to grief, going back to grief, it's unavoidable. It's unpredictable. It shows up with a smell, a song, a thought, right? And in the most unfamiliar and uncomfortable places. You could be in the middle of the floor doing boots on the ground, and then it hits you. Oh, wow, I really miss my loved one. I'm not okay. And then you're a mess in the middle of the party, So I just wanted to piggyback off of that with trauma, what Marlon was talking about, because it really is all connected. Sometimes you could distinguish it, and sometimes you can't. But with grief, it can show up in emotional, sadness, anger. Physically, you can't sleep, you can't eat. Sometimes you eat too much or you sleep too much. And mentally, confusion. I think you're very confused. You kind of dissociate. You become numb. You don't feel like you're a part of your own body because this can't be real. You're trying to make sense of what happened. And so it can, that's just a few effects of it on my standpoint, Marlon.
For sure.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And you kind of went through that we all talk about the grief cycle, right? You have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that's not a linear thing. That is, it can ping pong. 1 minute you're good, 1 minute you're not. You could have done so well for 9 years, and you hit that 10-year anniversary, and it's like you break down. You know what I mean? So that's why I always say it's a journey, and it can look. Some people get sick. I've had a client that lost their mom, and she actually had to be hospitalized. She had amnesia, and she just like blacked out, and she couldn't remember since the blackout. And so it also can affect you so much in a medical and a physical way that you're just unexpected. And I remember after my mom passed, I had to get my appendix removed, like not even paying attention to my body and what I had going on. Then all of a sudden I have this pain, and boom, now I'm in the hospital having surgery, right? And so it can sneak up on you in so many different ways. It can look different, again, like we said earlier, for so many different people. But it's something very important to kind of pay attention to and know.
Wow. So it has many different impacts on us psychologically, physically, emotionally, mentally. So it's important again to I wouldn't say grief is my specialty nor trauma, but I do encounter it and I have to be astute in it. But anytime I'm talking to someone, I'm encouraging them to be kind to themselves and be sure to take care of self and not to keep that stuff in. Ensuring that you have community, someone to reach out to, even if you need them to just listen. Even if you don't want advice or anything, you just want a listening ear just to be like, I'm there with you. You're not going through this alone. So I see how that impacts us in different ways. So I mean, during this month of mental health awareness, we've touched down on a lot of different topics. Why is this topic just as important to bring awareness to?
I think you start out with some stats that shows that there's more people than not that has experienced trauma and or grief. And we look at this locally, like I said, New Orleans, we've been through so much that there's more people around you that have probably experienced these things as well. And they're human experiences, right? So I think in Mental Health Awareness Month, we have to take into consideration what most of us are experiencing and going through and bring awareness to it, because in trauma and in grief, sometimes you feel alone, sometimes you feel confused, as we said earlier, and and then in the community, sometimes people don't know what to do and don't know what to say, right? That's a huge thing you hear. I don't know what to say. But like you said too, Angie, sometimes it's just showing up and listening. You don't have to say too much. You just have to be present, right? Never underestimate the power of your presence. And so I think with this month, this is home. Everyone's been here or has known someone that's been here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing can affect your mental health like grief and loss and trauma. That's what we all live with, right? I always, we're faith-based counselors, right? And we're Christians. And so I always use the verse in the Bible in Genesis chapter 6, verse 6, when God said he was sorry that he had made man and it grieved him at his heart. And so God was the first to grieve.
Wow.
And so realizing that he created us in his image and to let us know in this life you will have trials and tribulations. And a part of that is losing things that you love. Right. And I had a client years ago who lost his wife, and he said all the time, I don't want to forget her. I don't want to forget her. She said I can marry again. She said I can move on, but I don't want to forget her. And I said, you don't have to forget her. Grief doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with love in a new form.
Wow.
Right? You learn to live with that love in a new form. You said it earlier, Marlon, and I heard it first from Regina King. She had lost her son to suicide. And 2 years later, she did an interview, and she said, grief is love that has no place to go. Right. And when you think about that, to not grieve is to not love. So love creates the grief. Right? Love creates the grief. When we think about every experience that happened in that Bible, it's all surrounded by love. Right? And it all took a process. So you really have to be patient with yourself. And in Mental Health Awareness Month, this is so great, Angie, that we're talking about this, because growing up, people died, but we didn't really talk about it. You move on, or you give the repast and you get a few beers and you start second lining. In New Orleans, we throw a second line when people pass away. But what about when it's quiet? And you don't get those calls and you don't get those hugs and you don't get those I'm sorry for your losses? What about when you're not busy? I was watching another interview with Tyler Perry, and he said when he lost his parents, he kept moving around. Oh, I gotta write this, I gotta write that, I gotta shoot this movie. And then he said grief was sitting right on the couch waiting on him when he finally got home. So it waits for you. So it's not nothing you can run from. So this is so important to bring awareness to these type of topics so people can know you're not alone. And there is community and connection out there.
Yeah. That's so good. So guys, I know I hear a lot of correlation between the two as we're talking, but I want to bring some clarity and I want you guys to help me with that. Can you explain, or is there a difference between grief and trauma? Is there a difference?
I think for me is that love piece, right? I look at everything in context. So, in trauma, there could be parts of grief that someone may experience. So someone that may go through sexual trauma, right? They may grieve losing that person that was living under that trauma, living under that experience. If the trauma had a hold on them, they could grieve losing that part of them or that person of them to become this person who has now got their power back, right? That love for themselves is there, and love for themselves is the thing that's moving them. I think it really looks at the context of what that person has going on. A lot of it is related, but there are situations as where it could be separated, or grief could just be that part of their growth from the trauma, versus the and some folks, they grieve and there is no trauma attached to it. They understand where that person lived, how they live, what they wanted, where they are. And, some people are happy, right? Some people understand too freedom of the spirit. And so, there may not be trauma in that context. So I think sometimes it's very related, right? And then sometimes in context, it could be very separated as well.
Good point.
Yeah, and also, like we said, it's an individual experience. And that's why I think therapy plays a big part in this, in trying to distinguish, okay, is this grief, Doc, or is this trauma, or is it collaborating? Because they can coexist. Because grief can be traumatic, right? Grief can be traumatic, like losing somebody to suicide or violence. As we know in New Orleans, I've lost many family members to violence and car accidents. Those very frequent. That's hit hard, but it doesn't take away watching your loved one transition. Now, I want to say too, people learn to say different language, when you're in therapy, because there's a client I had who refuses to say that her mother died. She says, no, she transitioned to be, and that makes it better for her. That's how she coped.
Yeah.
She transitioned. She didn't die. She's living, but she just transitioned, right? And so grief can be traumatic, and trauma can involve grief. Going back to Hurricane Katrina, that was so traumatic to see the waters and the winds and all the people that died, right?
Yeah.
And it made us experience that loss. New Orleans was never the same after Hurricane Katrina. It will never be the same, right? And talking about that terrorist attack in the beginning of the year, it doesn't even feel right for me walking on Bourbon Street, because I feel like I can see the people just getting splattered, right? That's those flashbacks that comes up. That's traumatic, right? But it's also a part of grief. So it depends. I go, like we say in law and ethics, it depends.
It can go either way.
Very nice. And listen, y'all, the people are going off in the comments. Thank you all for watching today, and thank you for coming to support us and coming to be a part of what we're doing. So this is awesome. So again, it goes back to support. You need support. You can't do these things alone. I always like to say we were all born alone. Even if you were a twin, you did not come out of the womb with your twin, but we're meant for community. So guys, what are some helpful ways to support, or what would you say to someone going through to support oneself or someone else if they're experiencing grief and or trauma?
I would say, I know, looking at, and I was having from a personal experience as well, showing up again. You may not know what to say, right? But I remember just being stuck, and my friends and my family, I mean, they just showed up. And whether it's as simple as, here's a meal, right? I'm here if you want to talk to me. I'm here if you need anything. that was probably one of the most impactful things out of experience. And I would say additionally, as that person, I heard Jess say in the previous one, you know, she's that strong friend. I'm that strong friend. And I'm that counselor, right? I'm that therapist. I'm supposed to know how to deal with this and have it all. And a part of me, you know, I recognize that sometimes I wasn't letting people help me. Sometimes I wasn't, you know, I was just trying to be strong in the midst where I don't have to be. So, you know, that person that may be going through this and, you know, you're the strong friend, sometimes it's like, listen to the people that's around you that want to be there for you and allow that space, allow that time, and allow that opportunity, because it allows you to breathe a little bit, right? Even if it's just for a little bit, it allows you to breathe. And that's just so important as you go through this. So being open to the help that's around you, you know, and of course, reach out for help when you feel you need, you know, whatever that may look like, right? Calling a friend, getting into therapy, doing yoga, taking a trip, just kind of looking at those pieces, I think is important on both ends.
That's so good. I want to speak briefly to what you just said, that I'm the strong friend, or even the accolade of being a mental health professional and people putting that pressure on us, saying that we have to know. One time I had a friend and I was talking to her and she was like, you're a counselor. You don't get to do that. I say, wait, hold up now. Hold up. I'm a human being as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have feelings as well. So I'm going to have my moment, just like I give you space. I'm going to take space to process and not be okay. So absolutely receiving that help, and then also knowing that it's okay to not always be okay. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be okay just because you wear an accolade, right? So what about you, Jamal?
You know, I think it's so important. All of us have the hat of the strong friend, the hat of a mental health professional, where I always have to show up as a robot. I'm very, very human. And as Black men, you know, it's hard to be vulnerable and to feel safe in spaces without feeling judged or anything like that. Yeah. So definitely allowing people to show up for you. Allowing, you know, I don't even like to be recognized. Like last night, that was like, because it's a part of my trauma. It's a trauma response. I just never really felt like enough growing up, you know, just for how different I was, you know, how unique I was. So just allowing people to show up for you, allowing people to say congratulations, allowing people to say, I'm here for you. You don't always have to be here for me, you know? And I think, you know, when I was thinking about working with my clients too, because I work so much with grief, all of them had something in common. They would say, I'm so tired of hearing the same stuff. And they'll say it in a little bit more vulgar language, right? But they're safe. And, you know, I'm tired of hearing this, Jamal. Like, what are you tired of hearing? I'm tired of hearing I'm sorry for your loss. I'm tired of hearing they're in a better place. I'm tired of hearing that, it's going to be okay. And I said, well, what do you want to hear? And they say nothing. And I sat with that. You know, you don't always have an answer for somebody who's lost something or somebody. Yeah. We think we have to have the answer because that's protocol, especially in the Black community. You know, we respond quickly. God got you. You know, God's he's going to bring you through. And he will. But right now, I just need you to listen to how I'm feeling. Yeah. What I'm experiencing. I'm angry with God. I'm angry with the person who left me. You had the right to die on me, and I needed you. Like, this is what people are sitting with. You know, it's a process that you have to navigate through, and it's a challenging one. But listen, if I can give any advice, which we don't do that as therapists, right? But to anybody that's watching and you're trying to help a person process a grief, a loss, or some trauma, listen. We listen and we don't judge.
Come on.
We don't have I don't always have the answers. Just because I have a PhD in counselor education and supervision, there's a lot of times where I just say, I don't know. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. and learning to be okay with that. When people try to put pressure on you that you should know, because you went to school all this time, you should know. I don't know everything. We are lifelong learners. And speaking of lifelong, grief is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
There is no time limit. It's a lifelong process. You're going to deal with this process until you die.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just facts. So
that's so good. Y'all, so again, we talked about community connection. We know about that. And again, it's important if you are grieving right now or you're going through trauma. I just want you to know, as these guys have stated, these men have stated, that it is a process, but you can navigate it. There is help for you. If you need resources, you can reach out to me or either of them. I know that Marlon is in private practice. Are you accepting clients right now, Marlon?
Yep, I am.
So we'll make sure you get the information, how to connect with Marlon. Dr. Jamal, I don't think you're accepting clients at the moment, or are you?
I'm not, because I'm a school counselor of 900 kids, y'all. So I'm not particularly
the biggest caseload I ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a professor. So I really believe in taking care of myself, as you all should as well. Don't overwhelm yourself with work, because one thing as mental health professionals we learn is that if we're not whole and grounded, we cannot pour and help other people. And we're in a helping profession, so it doesn't make sense for me to, I can't counsel everybody. I wish I could. I get a lot of recommendations for me to see people. I wish I could, but I just want to, I don't want to over capacitate or, overdo things. And then I'm showing up to work angry or tired or stressed, because I've been there before. So to prevent burnout and, things like that, I take it a step at a time. Absolutely. So when I do, when people do recommend people to me, I'm able to recommend my friends, like, the other Black men like Marlon and other Black men I know in other spaces, because help is out there.
Yes.
It's there.
Absolutely. Y'all, one more question, and then we're going to get into what you have going on. So, we touched down on grief, loss, and trauma. What small and daily actions can someone take to begin healing from grief or trauma?
To me, like Marlon said, just showing up, getting out of the bed.
Yeah.
Taking care of your hygiene.
Yeah.
Nature, I don't think people realize how much nature heals us. A few weeks ago, I went to the lakefront, and that water, just me and the water, and I was able to let a lot of things go. I was able to take a lot in. It was nature, walking and exercising, meditation, yoga. For me, singing, of course, church, Bible, just things that works for you. You really need to find out what works for you, because nature doesn't work for everybody. So finding out what works for you, but healthy things. We want to avoid drinking and clubbing and smoking and those unhealthy habits that's easy to fall into.
Yes.
When you experience trauma or grief, and that's what really starts to affect us even more. Mm-hmm. So definitely calling a friend or a loved one who that's going to support you. Support groups, therapy, many things we can do.
Absolutely. I love that you said finding healthy coping skill, because I, as an addictions counselor, I work with a lot of people who have adapted negative or unhealthy coping skills, such as substances. Alcohol is considered a drug. Other compulsive behaviors like sex and gaming and internet and working or workaholism and all of those things. So finding healthy coping skills is important. What about you, Marlon? Anything to add?
Yeah, I would say allowing yourself to grieve. Yeah. Like Tyler Perry said, it was waiting on the sofa. Don't have it waiting on the sofa. Allow that time and space so you can, you can tune into that. Here and the now, knowing where you are, you're in a safe space. Hopefully, if not, get into one of those safe spaces. I always try to look at a couple of boxes like spirituality. What do you need spiritually? Try to invest into that. Physically, if it's working out, invest into that. Socially, going to that community, finding your tribe or being in that tribe, being present in that could help. And then, if you're in any relationships, sometimes using your partner to help you just figure it out and move and feel the support. Animals, my baby's behind me snoring, so hopefully y'all can't hear. But me spending time with my dog was helpful. And Doc, I think you said something. Nature, like although we live in Louisiana, New Orleans, but there's some places, City Park, Ottoman Park, The Fly. I used to walk even in the French Quarter. Now I'm bourbon, but looking at the looking at the architecture and stuff like that was just something like that's just me, right? Or investing into what you've been wanting to do. Try to invest in your passion. Those type of things. I think all of those things can help you manage, grow, and feel. I think that's the big piece too. Just allow yourself to feel each day. Live it day by day, time by time, hour by hour, minute by minute, whatever you need. Tune into that.
Angie, I want to touch on something that he said right quick. He said something about passion. And when we looked at those 5 stages of grief that Kubler-Ross came up with, there was this guy who created a grief continuum, and he put acceptance in the middle, and on the end he had fear, worry, anger, denial, bargaining, and on the right side he had purpose, optimism, forgiveness. Right, that pain can turn into purpose. That pain can turn into purpose, and I've seen that happen with so many different people who create that purpose out of that pain, right? So looking into something that you really wanted to probably get into, and you do it for that loved one. I'm doing this for my mom. I'm doing this for my brother. I'm doing this for my sister. I'm going to name my practice from that person because they inspired me. That's how that love is showing up in a new form. They're still here with me, so turning pain into purpose, feeling to healing, it all connects. It's all connected. You hear me say all the time, it's all connected.
Yes.
It truly is. It truly is. And, I think it's awesome to have Marlon here today to even speak about that experiences. I don't know what it's like to lose a mom, right? I've talked with clients, friends, loved ones who lost their parents, my own family, but I don't know what that's like. And I don't want to know what it's like. But guess what? If Jesus tarry one day, I may just know what that's like. So to hear that experience from you, Marlon, thank you for sharing that and being open enough to share it and know that we are here. You do have community.
Thank you. And I do want to add on that purpose piece because my brother, so he started a clothing line. Drop that for him. That came out of being in the hospital with my mom. Her name was Yolanda, so some people will call her Yo. So now he has a clothing line, and it's doing very, very well, especially down in the Houma Thibodeau area. And Nola Jim kind of came out of this as well. So I think we're in that purpose place, and it's funny that you say it too because I told one of my clients, that's painting your purpose. And he went get it tatted on him.
Wow.
Because it really stuck with him that way. And now he's in this place. So that I just want to say that as well, because we don't think about that space or that place, but it does exist. And I just want to make sure that's something taken away as well.
I love that. And listen, I feel like I'm starting to tell my story even the more, but I have a past and it includes trauma. But I love the pain turning into purpose because now I take my pain, I've healed it, and it is a continual process. But now I get to help others and help them to heal their pain. And guess what? They touch someone else and heal their pain, and it's on and on. So I love this. We're all walking in purpose. I am so appreciative of both of you being here today. I want to end with this. So we're going to start with Dr. Jamal and then Marlon talk about what's coming up. What do you want people to know? What do you want them to engage in? What you got going on?
Okay, so first of all, tomorrow, the West Side Association is giving a mass choir musical, and this musical will be at St. Stephen Baptist Church. Let me pull up the address, Angie.
Okay.
This will be at St. Stephen's Baptist Church. On LB Lane, it's on LB Landry. Is right across from Fisher Community Church. I can't pull up the file right now, but we'll be honoring Professor Harold Harry and also Pastor Thomas Brown from the Morning Star Missionary Baptist Church. And the musical starts for 5:45. And I will be singing and I'll be directing as well. So y'all come out and have a great time with us. Also, next Friday, I'll be with Quintess. She is having, I did a series with her called Tackling Trauma on Monday morning, her show, and we're doing a live session. So we'll all be live. And that's for 7 o'clock. And she just sent me the address for that. So I definitely have that one. And that one would be, I'm so unprepared. Sorry, Angie. That one would be at the Haven NOLA, 10555 Lake Forest Boulevard. And it's free admission. So come out. We're going to have a talk about trauma some more in person. That's next Friday, June the 6th. And then on June the 30th, I don't know if you all know, but next month, June, is Men's Mental Health Month. Okay. And I've spoken with two of my musician friends, Brandon Butler and Ishmael Cotton, and I'll be doing a musician and mental health night for the men musicians. And so we're going to get into some conversations on what it's like, being a musician in ministry and, that performance anxiety, personal battles, and still having to show up and play everything right and do everything right. And you work like a dog because preparing for so many gigs and services. So we're going to be doing that on June 30th for 6 o'clock. June 30th is a Monday because I have to find a time when musicians are not that busy. So I was given the advice of a Monday at 6 o'clock at my church, Second Zion Baptist Church of Marrero, 6520 Second Zion Avenue. And we'll be in the hall area. We're going to have some food. And it's for all male musicians to come out to put an end to Men's Mental Health Month, to have this healthy conversation and foster community and care. So that's all I have coming up for now.
Nice. I think you had them at food, but I know it's going to be good.
Oh, y'all feed the people. Feed the people. They coming.
Hey, you, Marlon. Let's talk about what do you have going on?
So let's see. So I am taking clients in my private practice. Follow at Nola Mind Gym on Instagram. That's my baby that I'm creating. Like I said, coming from my experience in the past, it's gonna hopefully promote mental health to our community. This is where too you'll know what I do have coming up next if I'm presenting on June 7th. If you don't know, I am a band head as far as marching bands. So you can always find me under the bridge for Mardi Gras season. Loving the band. So I'll be working with the New Orleans band directors. We've experienced a lot in the band community. We've had some suicides, but we've also had, unfortunately hazing incidents that took a life of Caleb. But in that, we're going to be talking about mental health, some tips and tools for the band directors to know if their students are having problems and providing some resources. And then lastly, I am taking on new supervisees. So if anyone's watching, you're a PLPC, you need a supervisor, you can hit me up. Clinical, I'm not versed in the school counseling piece, but if you have that clinical experience, I'm also available as well for supervision.
Absolutely. So if you were wondering what the LPC-S meant, it's supervision. All right. So guys, thank you both for being here today. This was amazing. I feel a part 2 brewing, so I will be getting with you soon about that. Yes. So and for you who are watching, thank you for rocking with me this month. Again, I was just inspired because I wanted to bring light to not just myself or mental health awareness, which is just as important, but the people who do the work, the people who are engaged in the work every day, day after day, showing up for people no matter what's going on. So again, kudos to you guys, and thank you all for watching. You have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Angie.
No problem.
See y'all later. All right, moms.